All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy, GS Luke, over there with our Round 3 live stream for the Farmers Insurance Open. Going to get you guys ready for all your lineups tomorrow. But first off, a look at the conditions, a weather report over there for Saturday. Weather going to be a big talking point for our review here in just a minute. And then afterwards, some of your strategy over there for Showdown, as well as some player pool notes, some shots gained recap, that sort of thing. And we'll tie it all together with any questions that you guys have down there in the live chat, as well as some lineup construction notes towards the end. So we'll build a lineup or two together, going over everything that we've talked about to give you guys a little process related information over there for your lineups on moving day. But I see we already got a bunch of you down there. What's going on? Alan, Kevin says it was a lot of fun to watch. I agree with that. Crazy round today. We'll talk about that, Alan. But yeah, we got the whole rest of the weekend to work with. What's going on? Coach Sav, RM Jack as well. Go Cole it. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your weekend and we can keep it moving. Svensson, by the way, if you guys didn't see what happened at the end of the broadcast, he got absolutely shafted today. So if you felt like the weather was working against you a little bit, I definitely share that sentiment here. But Svensson literally had the officials working against him on his putt to go out there and make the cut. The horn to go out there and end play went off during his backswing, and it made him pull the ball. You could see a literal effect on him making or missing that cut. And yeah, so hey, if he got shafted, he took it the right way. Then I'm not going to take it the wrong way either. So let's talk about it. The course today played hard across the board. In fact, that north course that we thought would play easier played about the same as what you had there on the south course. Now, if you take a look at the birdie average, it was much higher over there at the north side, which was to be expected, but a lot more bogeys as well. In fact, you take a look at this north course, you had a par 4 that played nearly as a par 5. This par 3 played to over a 3.6 average, just not the sort of stuff that we're used to seeing. And though by the end of the day, it did play slightly easier than the south course, this has never happened before, right? What happened today was completely unprecedented. And since that 2016 renovation, the smallest split that we've ever seen was like 0.55 shots. And that was on another really windy day. Today, though, took that to a completely different level. So, I have some theories onto why the north course played so hard. I would say for the future, when we have these exposed greens on a windy day, if it gets above that 20-mile-an-hour mark, you're going to see balls moving in that absolute carnage like you had out there for round number 2. Not something that we are really familiar with around Torrey Pines. If this had been another coastal track like the Bermuda Championship, we've seen these kind of winds out before. Heck, even Pebble Beach, we've had these kind of rounds, but at Torrey Pines, not that kind of experience. And you can see the result of that, right? A 3.5 over par scoring average at both of these golf courses, which at the South course, we kind of knew would happen, right? It's a major championship type of venue, but I don't think anyone thought that would happen over there at the North course. So if you got stung by Showdown today, you're probably going to be sharing that with a lot of people out there, because if you did any sort of research from round number 1, right, you would have been on those guys out there in the North course. So I say that to say that you shouldn't be changing your process because of one sort of result out there. Wacky stuff happens in golf. I had a few people in my Discord trying to figure out what happened with the weather, and sometimes there's no real good explanation. I think that the greens over there, at least what the announcers were saying, were just a lot more exposed than the South course, and it wasn't even the ball striking that was the problem. It was the free putting that you had over there on the North course, and without the shot link data to go off of, it's not like we can really confirm our suspicions. But if we take the announcer's word on that, it's something to at least put in our back pocket for years going forward. So the weather tomorrow is not going to be anything like what we had for today. So it's not really going to matter over there for Friday, especially after the cut line, right? There's no North course in play, but anytime we look at the day prior results, sometimes it's great, right, to pat ourselves in the back when things go well, but also to try and learn from mistakes as they happen. So that's what I'll say about the weather. Didn't really go as I planned out there. The birdie average being about 0.5 higher on the North course did help out from the Showdown perspective. If you take a look at the top scorers, a lot of them still came from the north side. So if I'm, just going ahead and sorting it by the top scores of the guys that shot -1 or better, what is it? 1, 2, 3 of them played on the south course. The rest of them were on the north course today. So if you went out there, you played that edge, you still probably had a good day. Personally, ended up being a slightly losing day overall, but it was more so because of the guys that I chose on the north course. Like I didn't play William Mal. I had some Sun GM, some Jason Day that carried some lineups. Fishburne, who we talked about on live stream yesterday. But I also had some guys like a Tony Finau who shot like 5 over par. So it was just a day that pretty much you got wrecked if you played Showdown. I think the only people that really got onto guys like a Jackson Suber from the South course were people that were blindly picking names. So, hey, if you won on Showdown for round 2, I guess congrats to you out there. But I think it was a slate for the fish to go out there and have himself a day. So, again, if you had a down day, I wouldn't worry about it all that much. That's just going to happen sometimes with DFS and with Showdown. I've been doing this long enough, 4 or 5 years over here on YouTube at this point. I have plenty of up days and then plenty of days like this where you're just like, what the heck? You feel like you can't get anything right. And that's just how it goes sometimes, as they say. So going over here to the weather side, looking at the models over here for Friday, we're going to be complete with it just in case, but they all look relatively calm. So if I bring up all 6 models at the same time, you can see that the highest sustained winds that we have are about 6-7 miles an hour, and that's down here on this Medio Blue model. The rest are there in that 6 mile an hour and below range, and mostly about the same temperature, mid-60s when it comes to the temperatures on Friday. So I would say ideal conditions out there for scoring. Now the pin locations are going to change after days 1 and 2. They were the exact same over there for Wednesday and Thursday. For Friday, they could get tougher, but mostly on moving day, they get a little bit softer heading into the weekend. So the scoring, I think, is going to be about even par. So you can see day number 1 with the calm conditions, right? It played about 0.6 over par. We have to remember that with moving day pins, it might get slightly easier out there tomorrow. Plus, you're going to have a higher talent level of players. The reason we focus on this is that from the Showdown perspective, we're going to need some pretty low rounds. And we can't bring up the round 1 scores over here on Data Golf, but you had some guys on the South course getting to -4, -5. Danny Walker that shot a -7 over there in round number 1. So for a Showdown optimal play, we're probably looking at a -5 round or better. -4 if you're in a smaller field GPP is going to be a really nice score to have, but it's going to be a completely different day, right? -3 is not going to be the best kind of score that you have out there. And rather than some of the grinders, the bombers that we were looking for on the North course, which by the way, guys like Goddard, Jason Day, Mal, Sun GM really fit that mold. So it's kind of nice to see like a Fishburne, Patrick Rogers, Thomas Dietrich, right? Those are all kind of bombers off the tee. It was nice to be able to take advantage of that today. Tomorrow, I think it's a little bit more balanced. I'm really looking for iron players that can set up birdie opportunities, and then any sort of putting regression would be nice to have as well. So the weather doesn't really have much to stack. It's worth noting that we don't have tee times quite yet because of the delay in play. I do want to refresh the PGA Tour.com's Twitter real quick to see if they've posted anything, but no news when it comes to the tee times quite yet. So we'll have to double check the PGA Tour site to see what they're doing. If they're doing twosomes off of hole number 1, I could see an advantage to going after some earlier starters. The wind started to dry out the golf course today. It's not going to be as windy tomorrow, so I'm not sure it's going to get as crispy as what you saw in the afternoon. But the morning guys are going to have a little bit calmer conditions. Most of these models look slightly calmer during the morning hours, and I would say more receptive greens as well. So they're probably going to get a little bit firmer and faster as that day goes on. So if they're going to go off in twosomes, which is still an if, we don't have that data yet, it could be threesomes off of both tees. If so, that really takes away any sort of weather edge that we'd be looking at. But if they do go off of those twosomes off of hole number 1, you might want to look for some of those early starters, not only because they get slightly better conditions, but also because they're going to be a lot lower owned. Anytime you have guys that are going off early on a Friday, Saturday, in this case, right, Friday, Saturday, and normally Friday would be the second round, but you get a little bit different this week. Normally those guys are lower owned, right? They're towards the bottom end of the board. They're not in as crazy good form as the guys that you have at the top. And in general, you're going to get half to sometimes even 3-4 times lower ownership on those sort of players. So without the tee times, I can't tell you for certainty how I'm handling the slate. But if we get tee times off and twosomes, I'm probably looking for some of those early starters. If not, it's going to be more of a game theory slate, going out there, mixing in players from across the board. Even if it is two sums, it's worth noting I'm still going to have some mid to later starters, some pieces of chalk that I'm using as conviction plays. But those early starters are going to be especially useful if that's going to be the situation. Let me catch up on chat. Let me get a sip of this water as well. Let's go through some stats. What's going on, the Peach? All your guys at the North Course sucked. Yeah, you might have gotten unlucky then, man. Sometimes that's how DFS goes, right? Glad the Kid Clan held it together. I agree. You had a 6 of 6 with Aberg as your last par. There you go. I saw that, Phil, actually, right over there in the SHIPIT Nation Discord. Good stuff, Phil. You love to see it. Finals broke, live move incoming. That would be something if he went over to live. But yeah, tough week for the Finau Fresh family. That was not what he was hoping for. So let's go through some of the shots gain metrics from today, give you guys some of the stat profile. Excuse me there, guys. Didn't mean to burp. If you have any specific questions about players, feel free to go ahead and let me know. We can do a stat breakdown. What we're mostly going to focus on here are the round 2 stats. So the guys that were playing on the South Course today that we have shots gain metrics for. Now, the guys that played the North Course, we're not going to have this insight on. Yesterday, we went through all the round 1 stats. So if you guys want to go through all of that, you can just go back to yesterday's live stream and get the full deep dive on the guys that were hitting the ball well. But we're going to focus on the guys that were hitting the ball well today, just because it's more translatable to tomorrow. So let's go through some of the top approach players. Number 1, Lanto Griffin, who, by the way, if he would have bogeyed the last hole, I would have made even more money today. My props carried most of my exposure with me fading most of the field. And Lanto Griffin, I took him to shoot over par today, which 90% of the field shot over par. So I felt pretty good about what happened there. And he goes out there and shoots even par. So, tip of the cap to Lanto Griffin. When you fade somebody and they go under, it just is what it is. You got to give them the respect that they deserve. And the stat profile for Lanto, he's leading the golf tournament right now, looks pretty sustainable. He's gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, and then losing over there with the putter. It's worth noting, though, that he's not an elite tier player. He's not the kind of guy that we really expect to see continue this into Saturday, Sunday. I guess this week, Friday, Saturday, over there for the 3rd and 4th round. But he is the sort of player that's playing the kind of golf that you could see continuing going forward. So he's going to be a player that I'm keeping an eye on. I think if it starts to go sideways early tomorrow, that it's probably going to continue going that way. But if he gets out there the first few holes and is striping the ball like you saw out there in the South Course today, then, he could be live to win this golf tournament. So I'm somebody that sits with an Aubert outright as of right now. He's, I think, like plus 150, plus 200, something like that. If I'm going to hedge out, I know there's a few other guys up there that maybe have a better pedigree than Lanto Griffin, but from the stat profile perspective, he's maybe the scariest challenger as of right now. I'm going through a few other good rounds. Jackson Suber gained a bunch on approach and with the putter. A John Pack gained on approach, but then lost over there with the putter. So from the stat perspective, I know he hasn't finished his round quite yet. That is a little bit favorable heading into tomorrow. All these guys are going to make the cut, at least as of the current standing. Somebody like Wesley Bryan had a really good approach day, but also gained a bunch with the putter. I could see him continuing the approach play, but if he doesn't gain those 2.5 strokes putting, he's probably not going to post that same sort of round. Guys that have a little bit of a safer stat profile, I'd say. You could say that Stephen Fisk here, who is -1 currently inside the cut line. He gained on approach, but then lost over there with the putter. That feels like something that could improve tomorrow. A Grayson Sig down here gained on approach and lost with the putter. And Alex Smalley did that. A Charlie Hoffman, who unfortunately Charlie's going to be missing the cuts. What is he? He's only +1, so I guess he's not. I guess he's going to make the cut. I thought he was missing the cut, though. On the broadcast, they were like, Charlie Hoffman, devastated, going to go out there and miss the cut. Is that true? I remember them saying that. Were they just wrong about the actual cut line? And yeah, look at that. They were just completely wrong about what the cut line was going to be. Or maybe the score that he made over there on the last hole. So yeah, Charlie Hoffman, I thought he missed the cut. The broadcast sure thought he missed the cut. Good stat profile, though, heading into tomorrow's action. So when you're gaining on approach, you're losing with the putter. The idea, by the way, is that you can continue to hit the ball relatively consistently from day to day. Your golf swing, the things that you're working on are the most repeatable part of your golf game. The putting, and especially even the around the green game, are usually very variant because it comes down to luck in a lot of cases, especially on a day like today. When you have those windy conditions, balls moving on the greens, if you got gusted in the middle of your putt, sometimes you had no chance to go out there and make it. These guys that gained a bunch of strokes putting, that's who's to say that it wasn't all luck today, that they were getting balls gusted into the hole, right? Whereas, let's say that, Joe Highsmith over here, unfortunately, he's not going to make the cut. So he's not the kind of player that we could use. But if he had made the cut, what's to say that he didn't lose 2 strokes putting because he was getting gusted off of the hole all day? Like, there are countless examples of that out there throughout the player pool. And that's what you want to look at in these stats. Like, if they were setting up birdie looks, which I told you guys before is really what I'm looking for in players, I want guys that were setting up a lot of birdie looks, whether that's looking at the shots gained approach stats, whether it's looking at shots gained ball striking, like we're going to do here in a second. That's the part that I can rely on, especially if you take a look at the historical data. And that's why when you're heading into PGA Tour events, guys, we're looking for guys that are hitting the ball well, right? Shots gained approach, shots gained off the tee are usually what everyone with a model is prioritizing. The reason for that is it's the most consistent part of the golf game. So if you just look at approach, which by the way is off the tee plus approach play, you had Lanto towards the top of that list as well. Same thing with the Jackson Suber, guys that were more consistent across both categories. Be guys like an Andrew Novak there at -2, a Charlie Hoffman again, who, last week it was the same thing. Hoffman was gaining on approach, gaining with the putter, and then gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, but then losing over there with the flat stick and the putter. It's the same thing this week. And what I'll note about Charlie Hoffman is that he's from the area. He's from San Diego. He's played this golf course more than anyone in the field. If there's somebody that can run the table on these greens, it's Charlie Hoffman. And the fact that he apparently made the cut, and before he was down as a miscut, I'm going to confirm that on the PGA Tour site real quick. I know Bet the Number had it. I know Data Golf did. So I'm assuming that both of those sites aren't lying. If he made the cut, this is like too good to be true of a play, like genuinely. Like, I'm so excited to play Charlie Hoffman tomorrow because he even looked like he thought he missed the cut or something like that. But look at this. No, he's T57. He's going to make it to the weekend. Seems like a damn good play to me. That's all I'm going to say about it with Charlie Hoffman. You guys can tell he's probably going to be in my player pool. Not only fits the stat, but all the narratives and stuff like that as well. So where are we at in chat? Let me catch up on any specific questions. Tony, I won't pay you back even if I join Live Fee now. By the way, I heard that over there from DJen on his live stream. The Tony, I won't pay you back fee now. One of the best nicknames I think I've ever heard in golf before. That's great. What's going on, Nicholas? Welcome on in. Which course is being played tomorrow? That'll be the South course only. It'll be the golf course and play for the next 2 rounds. That is correct. How would I handle a player on the cut line? He needs to finish round 2 for round 3 showdown. So that depends on your plans tomorrow morning. If you're somebody that's going to be able to adjust to news, then you wait and see what's going to happen. So for somebody like myself, that'll be up before play as they're finishing round number 2, you just adjust to it as it's happening. If you're somebody that's going to be busy at work tomorrow, not able to adjust to lineups, then you might not want to take the risk on guys that are on the line there. So in showdown, right, if you're somebody that can't adjust tomorrow morning, maybe you're busy, then take guys that you already know are going to make the cut. Now, if you're able to adjust last second, and let's say there's somebody that's currently outside the cut line that works themselves in, they could be a lot lower owned as a result. Now, it depends on the difference between like the end of play and then the actual start of round 3. If it's only going to be 15 to 20 minutes like it sometimes is, those guys go way overlooked. Sometimes they'll have a delay of like 30 minutes to an hour in between play, and those guys will get a little bit more steam. But historically, my take on those kind of players, especially the ones that are sneaking through in the morning, is to get way over the field on them, because in general, not enough people are going to get there, right? You're going to have people that are busy, especially on a Friday. A lot of times these round 3 situations are on a Saturday morning, and more people are off of work, are able to actually go out there and adjust their lineups before lock. Tomorrow, because it's a Friday, I don't think it's going to be that same situation. So that's a really sharp question. And like I said, it depends on your plans. But if you're able to, it's an edge that you could exploit. It's not a massive edge. It's not going to make you $1 million going out there and playing it tomorrow. But it could give you a little sizable leg up on your competition if you have that ability. You'd have to be around to see the final play. Yeah, that's my take on it. What's going on, Joseph? Welcome on in. The casters never know the cut line. Truth, that is amen right there for me. And I don't even think it was that with Charlie Hoffman. I don't think they knew what happened to him on his final hole. Like, they had it down as he hit a ball OB. He had his 3rd shot into the fairway, 4th into the greenside bunker. I think that his ball wasn't OB. I think he got a free drop from an obstruction or something like that. And then they had it wrong, because even Shot Tracker for the first like 5-10 minutes after the round ended, had him down as making a double or something like that. But look at that. And even his face, by the way, they showed him after he made that putt, and he looked physically distraught. So I'm not sure what went on there, but it looks like he made the cut. What's going on, Oliver? What do I think about Will Gordon? You have a good bit of him for a week long because of his driving distance and long irons. Can he keep it going? Can he keep it going? Absolutely. Will he? I guess we'll have to see, right? No one really knows if he's going to keep it going. I'll say that the stat fit and what you did out there making the play makes a whole lot of sense. I personally didn't get exposure there, but I have to say that I think that's a really sharp take that you went out there and took him because, yeah, he has the power. He has the club head speed to get through a lot of that rough, and he's a birdie maker. Now, it's a hard grinders golf course. That doesn't really play into Will Gordon. So he's probably going to make some bogeys this weekend, I would imagine. But if he's offsetting it with 4 birdies around, you're going to be perfectly thrilled with that. So I would say really good play, good positioning, and I'm kind of jealous. I don't have exposure myself. Let's go through a few other shots gained metrics. So what I really want to look at here are maybe guys to avoid, right? We can look at the ball striking stats to find guys to go out there and play. But guys that gained a whole bunch putting today in these windy conditions, you'd have to think that it's going to come back down to earth. And at the top of this list is somebody that I've played golf with more than a handful of times, Luke Clanton. He's one of my best friends, his best friend down here. One of my friend group's best friend, I'll say. I won't call him my best friend, but he's good. He's good friends with one of my buddies. And $8,500 gaining 5 strokes putting. I mean, I'll tell you, he's not a world-class putter. Like, he's known for his ball striking. He's much more of a masher off the tee and iron player than he is a putter. So this 5 shots gained putting from Clinton, like I think it's just a perfect example of the wind maybe helping out some people. So, I wouldn't expect that to happen tomorrow. In fact, if you're just looking at the stats, he lost on approach, did do his thing off the tee, which you're almost always going to see Luke go out there and mash the ball off the tee. But I'm not sure if we're going to see the 5 strokes gained putting. Joel Damon did that too. He's another sketchy putter. Sahith Theegala, like, you wouldn't bat an eye at him gaining a bunch of strokes putting. I'd even say the same thing with a Chris Ventura, but Wesley Bryan hasn't been the most consistent putter the last few years. Jake Knapp isn't an all-world putter. Paul Geider, I know I say his last name wrong. However you say it, he's not the best putter either. Like a Harris English, I don't know if I bat an eye at, kind of like a Sahith Theegala, but there are plenty of guys towards the top end of this list that you'd expect to see a little bit of negative regression from. And on the opposite side of it, if we take a look at some of the bottom end finishers, a lot of these guys are going to end up missing the cut. But like if a Toasty ends up making it somehow, his tee to green play was there today. He's only 4 strokes over par because he lost 2.5 strokes putting. Obviously, Joe Highsmith not going to make the weekend, but like an Isaiah Salinda, he's there at -1. He's going to make the weekend. You could look to him for a little bit of a bounce back because just like we were taking a look at those guys that were popping with the putter, these guys that underperformed in that category, it could have been the bad luck that got the best of them today. So Taylor Pendrith, it's not like he was amazing tee to green, right? He lost on approach, did gain off the tee at the very least. He lost those 2 strokes putting. He could go out there, even just be a neutral over there in round number 3. You'd be looking at a massive improvement. And considering that Taylor Pendrith was a really popular play this week, people really like the course fit and the POA putting numbers over there for Taylor Pendrith. I think that he's a really good bounce back candidate that you could use in lineup. So you guys already know that I really like Charlie Hoffman. I'll probably be in my player pool. I can tell you with 100% certainty that somebody like Taylor Pendrith will be as well. And just to go through a few of these other names, like going back to the top end of the shots gained ball striking list, like I really like what I was seeing here from Andrew Novak, really balanced shots gained profile. Not 100% sure if he's going to make my player pool. I'll have to see the ownership over there on guys like Novak. But the top end of this ball striking list, just like I mentioned for round number 1, are guys that are going to be towards the top end of my consideration. And because we only had half the field that played over there on that golf course, you can still go back to the round 1 stats and take a look at some of these. But keep in mind that it's now been an entire day since this round went down. So it's not going to be as consistent as what you have here at the round 2 stats. But because we only have 1 round for everyone in the field, you can't you can't only look at half the field for your player pool. You could still include some of those round one stats as well. So, just to remind yourselves of a few of the flushers out there from Thursday. Occasionally gained over 4 strokes out there on approach. I know we had a rough round 2, but maybe you take him in round 3 and hope he can go out there and hit the ball at the South Course just like he did for this round. Doug Gim, he had a +2 round today. Like, I know he had a little bit of a down day. Maybe you look to him because he also hit his irons well around the South Course the first day. And conditions are going to be the same as well, right? So if we go back to this round 1, I know I said that maybe it's not as valuable as what you had for the round 2 stats, but it was at the South Course, same course we're playing for today, obviously, right? It's only one shots gained, but at the same time, it's also in the same conditions. It wasn't super windy out there in round number 1. So these guys that took advantage of those iron shots could be a look. Now, Doug Gim's going to miss the cut, so he's probably somebody you don't want to play, but like a Chan Kim you could look at. Same with Victor Perez, he missed the cut. You maybe don't look at him. But Danny Walker, right? He had all 18 greens. Maybe you take a look at him for a little bit of a bounce back. A Sam Ryder there at T57. If it's 2 sums off of hole number 1, maybe he gets an advantage over there on that side. So these are the sort of players that I'd be looking for in my player pool. The stone's another great tool to go out there and use as well. Now, this is the stone from round 2. So these are not the stats over there for the next day. But over here, you can first off take a look at their round 3 historical. So you get a good idea for who plays the best during moving day. That's a really good category to look at. And then this bad round regression, I know I mentioned that yesterday, but that's going to be especially helpful after a really blustery day, right? Guys got beat down mentally. Who are the sort of players that go out there after getting beat up and it can go out there and bounce back, right? Some guys have the mental strength to go out there and do so, and a lot of players don't. So if you take a look at that bad round regression, you could try and find some of those early starters. They go out there and target for some leverage. So if you can find somebody that's like a B or better in that category and is going off in one of the first few groups, which by the way, this will update with the tee times for round 3 when they end up getting that posted here. I'm assuming in like an hour or so over there on the SHIPIT Nation site, you'll be able to do so. If you can marry that up with a good bad round regression, maybe even a good round 3 historical, right? I mean, getting all 3 would really be the holy trinity. You add on top of that some decent true approach delta over there in this category. By the way, the true approach delta is what you see right here. You want this as positive as humanly possible. So if you can find somebody with a good true approach delta, check in some of these round 2 expectations. In our case, it would be for round 3. What you're looking at for Friday, then that's what you want to look for in play. So make sure to check out the SHIPIT Nation Stone if you guys haven't already. Again, code Luke10 will give you a discount off any membership over there. Also help support me and my channel and all the content that I'm doing. And it'll give you guys a discounted rate off anything that they're doing. So you'll get access to the SHIPIT Nation Stone over there. Also DGen's scorecard, which has a lot of player grades out there for Showdown. So on there, he has some of his best round 3 players posted, and also guys that are good at longer courses, at courses when you have a lot of wind, which would have been really useful for a round like today. So make sure to use that code when you guys are signing up, and it'll give you that discount as I mentioned. But now let's go through some lineup construction notes. So I'll see if there was any questions I needed to touch on, but if not, we're going to go through a little bit of the process of building lineups together. Luke Clanton, great first name. I agree with that. Thank you. And when I played with them, I've played with him, I think 4 times. 5 if you count a range sesh that we were out there together. He gave me 25 shots on 9 holes and he beat me. So I probably shouldn't have admitted that, but yeah, he gave me 25 shots and I lost to him. And it was my own undoing going out there and losing, but geez Louise. What's going on, RM? Thigala was in his head today, rough to watch. I agree, but that was probably the case for most of the field, right? It was a really tough round, hard to go out there and grind when you have those kind of conditions. So I wouldn't hold it against anyone. You know, we got to see some guys there in the ESPN Plus coverage, but of the other 140, 150 guys that you had in the field, a lot of them were probably doing the same stuff. Homa was definitely a pivot today. That's for damn sure. A pivot so much that he pivoted from the golf course and went home. Hey, Luke, is there any slight edge to going off of 1 or 10? Good question. So I know we mentioned going off 1 for the North course, but if we go back to round 1 and take a look at the South course stuff, I would say that starting on hole 1 would be a slight advantage. And the reason I say that is that 8, you can see played slightly under par in round 1, 9's a par 5, and then 10's a shorter par 4. I mean, if you're starting on hole number 10, I just don't see the advantage to starting on that side because sure, 18's a par 5, but 1's not all that easy. 17's a brutally difficult hole. So I don't think there's really any sort of edge here, but I guess if there was going to be one, it would probably be starting on hole number 1. But yeah, nothing like the North Course, right? North Course round number 1, there was that big edge just starting on hole number 1, but not so much on the south side. Good question, though. Always something to look at. All right, let's go through some lineup construction stuff. So any last second questions, go ahead and throw them down there in the live chat. But in terms of putting together lineups, our main focus is going to be getting the leverage that we need. It's not the kind of slate where I think there's going to be a massive weather edge. If we do get those twosomes off of hole number 1, like maybe you take 1-2 early starters out there in your lineup, it's more so going to make sure that we have the duplication. We don't duplicate ourselves. That's the main thing. And then also we have all the leverage that we're looking for as well. I want to refresh this again to see if we have anything about the tee times, because it'd be good to know like what we're going to get out there. The second round will resume at 7:30 a.m. Okay, a bunch of guys withdrew, whatever. Nothing about whether it's going to be twosomes or threesomes, though. So I guess we're still in the dark if it's going to be that way. There's only, I think, like 60-something guys that are going to make the cut, though. So let me get Hoffman off of here. I'm just trying to figure out like if they're going to do the twosomes or the threesomes. So currently 70 guys that are making the cut. So that'd be 35 groups of 2. And they're having them go out at 7:30, right? So I think this is the key over here. They're having them go out really early at 7:30 a.m. So it'll be 10:30 over here on the East Coast. That's an hour and a half earlier than they started play the last few days, which makes me think it's probably twosomes off of hole number 1, because if not, they probably send them out there at the same time, right? They have them start at the same time, then they put them off in threesomes because they have plenty of time to get all of those 70 players in if they're going off of threesomes on both sides. So it's still a guess. Obviously, do your check tomorrow morning to make sure that you know the tee time situation. But for the sake of this lineup, I'm going to build assuming that they're going to have twosomes off of hole 1 because of how early they're sending those guys out to finish. That's just my hunch. That's just, my intuition as of right now. And if that's going to be the case, I'm going to prioritize jamming in at least 2 guys that pretty much just made the cut line. So what that's going to do is it's going to give us some differentiation, but it's also going to give us maybe the potential weather edge that you have for going off early. So I'm going to throw a Sam Ryder in who has a really good track record around this event. Also a player that you can use for some leverage there at $6,700. And we're going to try and take one other guy who's going to be one of the first few players off. In fact, if we go to the leaderboard, let's scroll down to the guys that are just there at T57. So the last few groups off, like maybe a Meissner's one of those first few groups off. Hoffman, I guess, right? Hoffman, we were talking about him a whole bunch earlier in this live stream. Like maybe you throw him in there at $7,400. So right off the bat, we have 2 guys that we know are probably going to be sub 5% owned. I haven't ran my ownership projections quite yet before we did the live stream here, but I'm for sure Sam Ryder's going to be sub 5%. I'm assuming Hoffman will be as well. I mean, I guess I'll have to see later on in my projections whether that's going to be the case. But you're going to get lower ownership on these 2 players and a little bit of a weather edge. So we've already done a lot of differentiation, and now we can kind of just round out the rest of our lineup with players that we saw having a decent stat profile. So, for example, a Taylor Pendrith, if he can have a decent bounce back day with a putter, like he could be on for a relatively low round. If you go up there towards the top, like I know we didn't talk a whole bunch about Luddy Aubert, but he just could not buy a putt for his life today. His ball striking stats were all pretty decent, all things considered, especially towards the first half of the round. The last 5-6 holes, he gave away a few of those strokes on approach and off the tee. But at like $10,900, you can take a piece of chalk like Aubert because we have guys like Hoffman, Ryder already mixed in. So that puts us down there at just over $7,800 for our last few players. And it's not like we have to take another pivot, but if we did so, right, it would ensure that we're going to be different enough. And Hoffman, it now says T69. I'm assuming that's, let me refresh this, guys. Hoffman's throwing me through a loop. What are we doing here? Okay, so there's that. Hoffman's T57, right? Okay. I don't know what DraftKings was saying there. Even they were confused, I guess, over there with that. Let's put Pendrith back in there. Let's throw Aubert back in there. I was going to say, I was like, what, is now Hoffman outside the cut line? Like, what are we doing? So those are our first 4. Our last 2 guys, as long as we're taking somebody that's relatively low owned, I'm going to feel really good about where we are. So for the sake of this, I'm going to throw a JJ Spawn into this lineup. And it's not like I love JJ Spawn more than everyone else around him. Like I think he's a pretty decent play compared to guys like a Mark Hubbard, a Stevens, a Moeller, Hodges. Like, Spawn is maybe like the second, maybe even the best play out of those 4 or 5 players. But the reason why I decided to choose him over some of his counterparts is that he's likely going to be a little bit lower owned than some of those other players because he just made the cut line. And so that's going to give us a little bit more leverage at that kind of spot. And then now for our last man in here, I guess it's kind of dealer's choice for who you're going to take. But if you're in a large field GPP, I would say to try and stretch it and try and take even more leverage if you can. So while in a smaller field single entry, a smaller field GBP, you probably get away with a Stevens or a Hodges and you don't duplicate yourself in most cases. If I'm entering the large field GPP, I'm thinking about going down here to a Johnny Vegas, like potentially rounding off a lineup with $200 left on the table. I'm thinking about maybe even going the whole way down to a Meissner here with $400 left on the table just to squeeze in even more leverage in that large field GPP. I don't think there's going to be a bunch of duplication like you had in round 2 showdown because of the fact that you only had so many guys up top that were playing on the North Course today. And that was our perceived edge. Obviously didn't go our way with that, but that was what we knew a lot of people were going to be playing out there in their lineups. We really had to force our hand with their differentiation. It's not that kind of slate, but in showdown where it's such a variant contest, I mean, it's just 18 holes of golf. Golf is already chaotic enough when we go out there and handicap it over 4 rounds. But when we only have an 18-hole sample size, we cut that sample down by a fourth, it really, makes it even more so chaotic. You see even more variance in that smaller sample size. So embrace that as much as you can. Leaving salary on the table is really never a bad idea when it comes to showdown like this, especially if you're in some of the larger field contests. Now, if you're in that single entry, that smaller field GBP that maybe only has a couple hundred entries in it, it's not as big a deal. Like if you like Stevens more than somebody that's $400 cheaper, then for sure you go out there and play your Stevens. Maybe it's a Hodges, a Moeller that you're going out there and using. A Moeller missed the cut, so don't use him out there in your lineups. But you don't have to make that pivot in that kind of contest. So that's the differences when it comes to contest with your lineup construction. You just want to make sure that you're catering the build that you're going with to the contest that you're entering. And if you're going through your player pool and you see that a lot of it is chalk, you might want to consider taking your exposure and centering it around contests that fit that better. And if that happens to have a lot of chalk in it, then maybe that is something that's single entry based or smaller. Whereas if you make your player pool and you see that there's a lot of pivots that you like for tomorrow, a lot of guys that are at that +1, if they have 2 sums off of hole number 1 that would be going out there early, then maybe jam a lot of those players into GPPs going that route. I think that you should kind of build your player pool before you go out there and figure out what lineups you're entering so that you can cater it towards the best kind of exposure. That's personally what I like to do. I like to go through my projections, get an idea for, where I stand with wanting to play people before going out there and reserving my contest. I feel like a lot of people do it in the opposite fashion. They reserve their contest or they go on the DraftKings, then they go over there and try and build their lineups. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it because, realistically, your player pool, the guys that you think are going to play well, that grade well in your metrics, that shouldn't change, right? You should have a process to help you pick your favorite players. I went through some of that with you guys, right? Looking for ball strikers, guys that could have some putting regression coming over the next day or so. That process you should be sticking to, right? Whatever that process is for you. It doesn't have to be the same as mine, right? I just give you guys that insight to try and, maybe take tidbits to incorporate into your process. The thing that changes slate to slate should be where you're entering those lineups. If you end up landing on a lot of chalk or a lot of pivots, then you might want to consider entering different contests. That's personally how I handle DFS. I think it's easier to change where I'm entering lineups than it is like what I'm looking for in players. And long term, especially when I was first new to DFS, like that's how I used to play, right? I used to sit on the toilet and build my lineups like everyone out there did, right? Like you reserve your contest, then you build your lineup. That's what 99% of people do, but it's more efficient to do it the other way. Is I guess what you don't have to do it, maybe consider doing it. over there into the future. But that's all I've got for the lineup construction segment. Let me see if there's any last second questions. And if not, we're going to hop on out of here. Is that a Hurricanes hat? It is. It's a Malbon edition Hurricanes hat. So they have different Malbon hats for every Malbon store around the country. And this is the one that they have down there in Miami. So it's not sold or anything. It's a limited edition that I got from my brother because he works there. Do I know if Underdog voids players that have yet to finish? If they finish tomorrow, it won't get voided, but if they withdraw, they will get refunded. So kind of depends on the situation there. Sites asked Hoffman plus 350 to win. So at least they still think he's in the field. Yeah, he's in the field. He'll be playing, but yeah, I don't know if I'd be betting them to win. And don't have to use all your salary either. If it helps get your lineups different, you hit the nail on the head, right? Like if you're going to have some extra chalk in there, like that you really like a lot of those players, leave some salary on the table. You can get it done there too. So like, yeah, even if you like a lot of chalk in your player pool, like you don't have to exclude yourself from the large field GPPs. Like I think that's a really sharp take. You just have to like force your hand a little bit differently, right? There's always ways to make lineups work with your player pool. You just have to be smart about it and make sure that you're accounting for it. So I love it. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got over there for the round 3 live stream. Best of luck over there with all of your exposure for tomorrow. Any lineups you're entering, any prop bets, any outrights you maybe have in the running as well. Hopefully, you guys can get some run good over the next few days. We're doing a round 4 live stream as well, so make sure to stop on by for that as well over here on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. And for all the moving day bets and matchups over there for tomorrow, make sure to stop on by on my YouTube channel. That'll be, I think, at 9:30, maybe 10 p.m. We'll be going live for that. Going over all the underdog and price pick stuff, some 3-balls, some matchup bets over there on DraftKings, that sort of thing, to get you guys with all your betting exposure out there for this weekend. That's all I've got, guys. Appreciate you guys stopping by as per usual. Smash that like button over there for the Ship It Nation folks. Also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything to come, and let's ship it over there for Friday.